Audiobook, Whoop, Weep, the sponges on your body.
Get ready for side leg lift.
Now, to whoop the sponge and whoop the sponge on your body, that
Begin.
is all about hearing like the silent. Like the J and Jackson is silent. You say J, but it says Jackson.
Change
Jackson.
sides.
Now, somewhere in there, I realized one thing. The body sponge comes in many forms. The tougher, the rougher, the rugged, the worker, the more solid and solitude it is. That its focus is just stuck in itself.
Get
Nothing can
ready
get
for
in or out.
squats.
And I hear moreover like the flood of a skin of a hairline that floods into
Begin.
like the system of like a vessel of like a privateer of like hearing the most outer silver lining on your body as an inner and outer glow of like a belt buckle. You break into like this blueprint of a room of like hearing frequencies on a grid and thinking
Get
somewhere
ready
in there
for
to the
Russian
left.
twist.
For 49.97, this sponge it glowed in the dark. It was an ultra sound scan of a
Begin.
fingerprint into a formula of a beaker of its own box. The box was the beaker. The more I nicked the switch on the box with my lashes, it formed a beaker into like the sponge of like intensifying, brain intensifying waves of hair, eyesight. Like eyesight itself was just the whooping of the sponge of skin itself. It intensifies like silk material to sterling silver in like many ways. The varieties of like beakers flooded and credit the whole room. The more I worked on like this optic fiber laser of like beakers that formed into a solid liquid, into a purple
Get
inhaler,
ready for sumo squat.
I realized that running circles around the sponge, that the more I ran the circles, the
Begin.
more I sobered up. And I thought, like, the soberer, the solider, the more solitude of the so-so. Just so, to keep sewing in a weave of, like, weaponry of a sponge-like skin that was a weapon that it formed all around
Get
me
ready
into
for
like
100.
this very strong formula of metallic like government over the brain
Begin.
that it morphed like the average character into like the staring light of a rhinoceros, a very powerful being of creature that formed into like its own molecular muscle. The muscle itself symbolizes like the wealth of the sponge to the teardrop in the vein.
Get ready
The
for
vein symbolizes like an outlet at any given point on the line of the vein as a symbolization of
begin.
power. The more I flood the line with power, the more I see like this omniscient being of a trailer of lightning and some type buffering of like a highlight moment until like where the sponge just gives off the light of the highlight moment. And somewhere in there I'm playing with every molecular circle or lap
Get ready
tracked
for step up.
vessel I've ever came with in thought and in speech itself as English to the moderate edification of edits to the cover of the screening of slowing down the actual marathon into like a cool chamber of cooling, stimulating stimulus of a sim into a chip that explains how to hear Tom itself
Get ready for
geek
single leg circle.
is a system of like very sharp eyesight, mouth, words. My eyes and words were sharp. The sharper the eyes, the sharper the word. The sharper the word, the sharper the eyes. To a yin and yang. I realized I came to a full realization that the fuller
Change sides.
I am at like being clear to the sponge and strings of like the being of like tyrants or torrents that I found like this
Rest.
con man of going back and forth and escapism throughout my lifetime just to find that I'm back at square one. And somewhere the beginning is the end, and I start over.